Okay, we're going to talk about Congress versus the president. This is a good way to kind of end the section on the president. Now that we've looked at both chambers, we're going to kind of compare the two. And this is a pretty big topic, so we'll break it up into two different parts. I'm going to start with the sources of the conflict. Let's talk about the president and his use of the media. First off, the president is the most prominent member of our political establishment. When he speaks, the nation listens. When he does an event, the television cameras are rolling. He's the only politician that can command a national audience. And so he has what's called the bully pulpit, and he uses that influence over the media to really get his message out there and frame debates in our country. Now, part of the president's role with the media is this idea that approval ratings kind of dictate presidential power. When a president has high approval ratings, the line of thought is that he will then be able to get a lot of things done, that these approval ratings transfer into political capital and political power, that politicians in Congress are unwilling to go against a popular president. We've seen that happen to a certain extent with some presidents, but it's not as clear cut and dry as that. You've had times where Bill Clinton, going through the impeachment trial, had very high approval ratings, but because he was going through the impeachment trial, he was kind of stuck as far as his legislative agenda. Then one other piece of the media's role with the president that I want to touch on is this idea of being a lame duck. Right before an election happens, when a president is not facing re-election, when their term is up, they hit what's called the lame duck session. Everyone knows that they will no longer be president after the upcoming elections, and there's really not much more that they can do or accomplish. The Congress doesn't have to worry about any kind of pressure from the president after the election, so that's when we see presidential's ability to get anything done, that period right before an election where the president is no longer running, or as well right after the election if a president has been defeated. Those are times when a president is considered a lame duck. Now, one of the real sources of conflict here that happens is that the president sees a role as chief legislator. In our country, the national agenda is often set by the president, that the president is able to really call attention to his programs, his use of the media, as we alluded to earlier. The fact that the president has one voice is much easier to track and follow than 535 different and diverse opinions in Congress. So the president really gets out there and sets the agenda. In his State of the Union address, he usually lays out a blueprint of what he wants to accomplish in the given year, and then he fights and uses the media to try to get that to happen. Now, one of the big tools the president has as far as legislation is concerned is that you have the president with the ability to veto legislation. If the president doesn't like something that Congress has passed, then they have the ability to veto that piece of legislation. Now, with the veto power, they have to do everything. They have to veto the entire bill. There is no line item veto where you can strike out different parts of it. Clinton v. New York, Supreme Court case in the 90s, declared the line item veto to be unconstitutional because it infringed upon the separation of powers, where Congress is the lawmaking body and President is the enforcement body. Now, the last part that we'll discuss in this section of Congress versus the President is this idea of foreign policy powers. There's a constitutionally made conflict between President and Congress, and that the President is Commander-in-Chief of our armed services. He can get our troops mobilized, he can command them when they're in the field, he can move them around the country, he can move them into a danger zone. However, the power to declare war rests solely with Congress. So Congress is the only body that can actually declare a war. Now, we've seen presidents try to get around this by engaging in military actions, and the only thing really Congress can do at that point is work on the funding. If you have no funding for a military conflict, then the troops have to come home. So Congress's real tool after the ability to declare war is their ability to use money as a control, and we'll get into that in the next part with Congress's control and the power of the purse.